Well, hello, Booknerds. Welcome to the Booknerds podcast. I'm back with another live session and a wonderful guest, an author who is just out of this world. I must say, I have been reading quite a few books this year, and this one, ranks right up there. And let me introduce the book first to you. It's called The Middle, and when I received it in my mail, I was like, okay, this is something, it has got the cover itself. It is so enchanting, so old worldly. I was like immediately intrigued because I love traveling, I love history, I love culture. And I mean, it was, I was really looking forward to it. And the book did not disappoint me. Okay, enough of my rambling. Let me introduce you to the author. We have with us Nayana Goradia, and thank you so much, ma'am, for doing this and writing this beautiful book.
Thank you. Thank you.
And before some of you just might not know about what Nayana Goradia does. She is, of course, this book is a collection of articles that she has written over a period of time. It is like one of those long lasting sort of endeavors which bear fruit when later in life, and they have come together beautifully. These articles have appeared in the Times of India, and the Statesman and other newspapers, and over a period of time. Which year did it start, ma'am?
Probably in the 60s. In the
60s,
60s.
60s, 70s, 80s, throughout.
Yes.
And yeah,
That's,
and yeah, so Nayana ji has, traveled the globe, obviously, and we'll be talking about all of that later. All these stories are in this book. And Nayana ji lives in New Delhi with her husband, who is also an avid writer and an ex-parliamentarian. She has 4 lovely grandchildren. So yeah, I mean, I was just telling her that you have five to at least 4 to 5 books more to write in this lifetime, and perhaps more. Okay, let's talk about. I completely forgot to mention the previous book. It was about there was this biography. It was called Lord Curzon, the Last of the British Mughals, and that was the first one, I believe, which was also your PhD, and which is mentioned in this book as well. Okay,
yes.
I need to catch my breath. But you know, uh, tell me something, Nanaji. It is writing a book of this proportion. Obviously, it is a collection of so many articles that you have written. But when you go back to these articles, again, and then you kind of, I am thinking that you have kind of the family has helped you a little bit also, and you have self-edited as well. What was the edit like? Because in this book, it is very important, because what to leave out, that is perhaps a more Herculean task.
I know. Well, this book, as you know, I just began writing at random, and these were short pieces. At that time, the Times of India and Statesman and all these newspapers had a middle, at the middle of the middle page, the editorial, just below the main editorial,
Yeah.
and they had these light-hearted pieces at that time. So I started writing for them, and it was great fun writing. And until I started to do my PhD on Curzon, then it was very difficult. And my tutor, first thing he did was to fling out these articles. He said, you put a stop to them. There's nothing you can't, do your biography with writing
Right.
such articles. But
Right.
they sort of reflect in a way the period also. Those These are personal articles, but they still also reflect the times.
Yeah.
And beginning with princely India in a small state called Jamnagar
Yeah.
in Gujarat, where I had my childhood, very early childhood, when my grandfather was an important functionary there. So, and then I was whisked off to a school in Colombo, in Sri Lanka, where my father was working. And then it was, college and education abroad, both in the US and later on in Cambridge, where it registered for research, came back and got married. And all this is sort of recorded. And then the children arriving. And in between, I've included two chapters from my husband's book on Fly Me
Yes.
to the Moon, which
yeah,
is a part of the story.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway.
And I'll just go back and forth in the book. And for those of you who haven't read it, too sad, but you have to pick up a copy and know what I mean. You have to go back. I'm going to go back and forth because it will be fun. Okay, let me talk about Curzon first. And it was fascinating, somebody devoting just these many years of one's
Mhm.
life to this. And on this count, that count, I would like to show also, share with the template of the book also with everyone. This is how it is kind of has come together. It has got beautiful pictures of those times. And this is when this chapter is called Curzon and I. Tell us a little more about this aspect, because during these times your husband was also teasing you, that
Yes, yes.
there's another man in your life, because you were so busy, obsessed,
Yes.
bordering obsession.
Well, it took 7 years, so he had a right to complain. But then it was his idea in the first place, because I'd been writing these short pieces, and he
Yeah,
said, now, why don't the girls were now in proper school, and I
yeah,
had plenty of time on my hands. He said, so now why don't you write something on Curzon? It's
yeah,
very controversial, Viceroy, and living in
yeah,
Calcutta, there's so much
yeah,
of Curzon around that.
yeah,
And it was very interesting because here was this character who sort of partitioned Bengal and
yeah,
set the ball rolling for the eventual partition of India in a way.
yeah,
And it was brilliant. He was handsome, he was arrogant, and
yes,
married to a very beautiful, rich wife. So it had all the ingredients of great drama.
yeah,
And my husband, sort of knowing how much I was fascinated with Calcutta and its sort of
yeah,
anachronistic quality,
yeah,
so he
yeah,
encouraged me to do this. And then, of course, one thing led to the other, and going to England to the archives and working with them.
yeah,
And these pictures are from, a lot of them are from his family home
right,
in England, and which, of course, was a model for the home in the government house in India,
yeah,
in Calcutta.
yeah,
And so and it took 7 years. And then, of course, finding a publisher, because it's
yeah,
what is Indian housewife, middle-aged housewife, writing on Curzon, and the British didn't like that one bit at all, because
right,
I was critical.
yeah,
And but anyway, I did get through. And
yeah. And you have, in fact, I would love to quote from the book. Curzon has not been forgiven in India for his partition of Bengal, though he made it out to be an administrative measure to relieve an overburdened province. Indian opinion has always taken the Viceroy's Act, and rightly so, to be a Machiavellian measure to divide and rule India by tearing apart the province on communal lines, giving birth to a Muslim majority province in the east. And obviously, it has got its historical repercussions, which we perhaps will be speaking about. But uh, tell us the stumbling blocks that happened during this research, and then we'll go on to other things.
well, stumbling blocks in the sense, I was a full-time housewife. Also,
Yeah,
having just moved to Delhi and also trying to do this, I didn't really have any, except it just took on very long, much longer than I
yeah,
anticipated.
yeah,
And so that was probably the
yeah,
main stumbling block. But anyway, one sort of, as I said, 7 years is a long time to do a PhD, but I did manage to. So it was
no, I
all
know
right.
people get scared. I mean, beyond 5 years, it's like, okay, what's happening? You
That's
know?
I know. And my tutor was so cynical about me to begin with, and he made me rewrite my first chapter 14 times.
Wow,
He said, "I'm not
wow,
going to have anything second rate over here." But
wow,
he was a
wow.
very good.
Guys, I mean, those of you who are worried about your PhD after 3 or 4 years, you have to listen to this. I mean, uh, you one has to do the rewriting. I mean,
Yes,
that is a fact. Okay, you were talking about Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, and your time there. It was obviously it was like a change for you, and kind of
yes,
in a school which is kind of in some ways tough to
yes,
acclimatize to. Your
yes.
times there, it is very interesting, entertaining, and kind of uh, at some points it was like, okay, is she going to kind of acclimatize quickly? Is she going to have friends? It's important,
It
when you
was,
are in
it was
yeah,
difficult because I was about 6 when I was whisked off to Colombo, and hitherto all my education was in Jamnagar. With where if you were your important functionary, you didn't send your children to school. The tutors came to the house, and I
yes,
had tutors for everything, even
yes,
English.
yes,
Unfortunately, they could not speak English. They could teach me
yes,
the grammar, and I could read and write, but I could speak the
yes,
language. So there I was in Colombo at a snobbish school, which laid a
yeah,
great store, on speaking correct English. Fair enough, that was what the school stood for. And
yeah,
so this was a problem. But somehow I stumbled along, and because I did reasonably well in other subjects, I got a double
yeah.
promotion. And that's where the
Oh,
trouble began, because it created a lot of resentment. And
I
then
know.
the girls, when they had very fancy lunch boxes, and I had a simple stainless steel dabba
Yes,
for a
yeah,
vegetarian Gujarati meal,
yeah,
and that was made fun of, which probably goaded me,
mm,
to sort of write. And when they made fun of my
yes,
speaking abilities, everything came
yeah,
out that day.
yeah,
That I felt that I had to learn to speak and write, better
right,
than my tormentors.
yeah, yeah,
And then I did manage after a while,
yeah.
and we all became very good friends, and we remained so for many, many years
Yeah.
to come.
But isn't it tough for so many kids, to kind of deal with that, and perhaps you did well and kind of became like I'm good at this and you need to follow me now. It was like that.
Actually, most of them grew up, went to nursery school there, so they didn't have that
Yes,
problem. And then
I know.
English was widely spoken over there, so that was not a problem.
Yeah,
And they're very lovely people, and it's
yeah.
heartbreaking to see what's happening right now over there.
I know, I know. It is such a it's truly sad to see all that happening, and I was particularly intrigued by because one of my favorite artists is Mario Miranda, and I was pleasantly it was serendipity that I could find these sketches, these illustrations in your book. I have to ask you about those illustrations and show them to those who are not exposed to his work. So let
Yeah.
me show them. This is the
Well,
kind of illustrations, and I tell you guys. I mean, if you go to Goa, and there is this cute little shop which has got Mario Miranda's work, which is for
okay.
sale there. So I the first time I came to know about him was there. I just walked into that shop and I was like, whoa, man, what is this? Who is this guy? Who is this? I thought it's a contemporary artist,
Yes, yes.
somebody who has just started out and building a business or something. And then again, I started reading up and I was fascinated. Tell us a little bit more. He has illustrated like for two chapters, right?
Yes, yes. Actually, the one that you've shown is
Yeah.
not, sort of illustrated for me. He had
Okay.
done two of my stories in which he did about
Yes.
4 to 5 illustrations, and those were
Right.
exclusively for my
Okay.
articles. He was, working at the Times of India group when I was
Yeah.
doing a trainee journalist course there, and a
Yes.
very, very pleasant man. And
Yes.
very, very obliging and a nice. Well, there was
Yes.
also Mr. Lakshman who was there, and we did
Yeah.
nobody, none of us would dare ask him for anything. He was right up there.
Yeah. I know. But what a time and place to be, right? I mean, in Times of India at that point, I mean, there were. I don't know if you kind of understood at that point of time what you were a part of,
Not
but
quite. No. It was huge, and
yeah,
today, I mean, social media has taken over in such a big way, but the
yeah,
newspapers and the feel of a
yeah,
newspaper office was something wonderful.
yeah.
Anyway,
And there's a chapter. It's called Exiles, and
yes.
it's. I would like to quote from there itself. You say that our accents, like our food habits, undergo a startling change the moment we touch the native shore. Now we can speak only English or American and have the greatest difficulty in articulating a whole sentence in the mother tongue. That is so. I mean, it is full
Yeah.
of sarcasm. And it was a lot of fun, uh, living in the West, observing all this. Tell us a little bit more about this time,
Well,
especially because
that time in the early 60s, there were not very many people who went abroad to study. And so if
right,
you went, you were given this label of foreign return. And that was
yes,
especially for boys, it was a very, very valuable this thing.
right,
Because in the marriage market, it put them there. And
yeah,
as I said, because there were not very many Indians going abroad at that time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they would come back and flaunt their sort of Americanness, or their, and
I know.
even if they'd been there for 2 years, they would sort of speak American accent with such a tang, and it would sort of slowly get eroded. But the relations were all very impressed, and everybody, it
Yeah,
was a big thing. And in fact, my bhabhi,
yeah.
my cousin's wife, she was surprised when I said, Naina, Ben, you have not changed at all. And she said it was great disappointment, that I acquired an
It
accent.
happened to me as well, Nayanaji, and it is so strange that it has happened to you also. I was like, I was in the US for 2, 3 years, and when I came back, everybody was like, expecting me to kind of throw an accent or something, and I was like very normal, and it
Exactly.
had not changed much, maybe an odd word here and there, and
Yes.
everybody was like, why haven't you changed? I was like, and then I started pretending. I started pretending. I wanted to throw that accent. So yeah, I think we have a question. So let's take it. Aditya is asking, how did your living experiences in so many different countries influence your writing style of writing? Uh,
Well,
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I picked up some ideas, but this, um, uh, I didn't live in so many countries. I lived in America for a year and a
yeah,
quarter, and about 8 to 9 months in Cambridge, and then I was back. And Sri Lanka, of course, about 5 to 6 years of my
yeah,
childhood.
yeah.
But they threw up the travels threw up a lot of ideas.
Right.
Like we talk of California, where I spent the summer at Berkeley,
Yeah,
where Pandit Ravi Shankar had come, and
yeah,
he wanted us to take him to the Indian students to take him to the very bohemian work. What's it called? I forget now. Um, in San Francisco,
yeah.
and we did that, and it was very, very interesting. City Lights bookstop.
Yeah.
So the ideas like that, and then of course I write about Dublin and
Yeah.
James
What a
Joyce.
story this one, right? About Pandit Ravi Shankar, showing up there and kind of, you being there, and it's a wonderful
He was
story.
playing at Berkeley. He was
Yeah,
giving a program at Berkeley University. He was not very well known in the US at that time,
right,
and he asked the Indian students to take him to the North Beach, um, quarter, the literary quarter in
right.
San Francisco. So we took him, and
Yeah,
I still remember when we were on the streets actually walking. Suddenly, a youngish man, reasonably dressed, he came up to him and shook hands and said, "Panditji, I'm so happy to see you
yeah,
here. Will you be performing in San Francisco?"
yeah,
So Panditji was taken aback and very happy, of course, that somebody had recognized him in
yes,
the city.
yeah,
And so he said, no, not this time, but
yes,
maybe later. And then, like common Indian courtesy, we say, so what do you do, young man? Yeah, no,
yeah,
no. So he are you a student at the university? So this young man said,
right,
no.
yeah,
And then, are you a resident of San Francisco? He said, no. And then, it got perplexed that what are you then? What do you do? I said, you? I am a human being, sir. That was all. You need to do anything. You were in North Beach.
uh,
So that
you
was,
know, these fragments of history, it is so amazing, guys. You really have to read the book to know more about this, because we can't tell you the entire story, obviously, otherwise you won't buy the book, so we won't tell you the entire story. Okay. This chapter, Aurangzeb in Alaska, was so hilarious for me. I was like, literally, I was like, what the hell is happening? Because this innocuous little, a chappal shows up, in the US, and goes on to Alaska. What a story! Tell us a little bit more, because the experience that it was. Obviously, we won't tell the entire story, but a little bit of it, perhaps.
Well, this was pure fabrication, except that I had a pair of moduries, these
I know.
pointed shoes with and the curling, the curl on top was a little
Yeah,
more curly than normal. And the
yeah,
shopkeeper in Bombay persuaded me to buy it and said, people will in America will love it. But
yeah.
I didn't find that they loved it. In fact, they
Okay.
were a little suspicious. Of course, they
Yeah,
didn't think it was a snake or anything, but they
yeah.
were suspicious. And so finally, I got quite fed up and tried to throw it away. Even then, it came back to me. So I buried it under the snow in the winter. Then again, unfortunately, they came back tattered and torn, but they came back. Then I had a student coming in the room next door who was doing
Yes.
an American girl who was doing a program on history of the Mughals in India.
Right.
And
Yeah,
she would look at it very speculatively,
yeah,
and very longingly at these things. So I said, "Would you
yeah,
like to keep it?" So she
yeah.
said, "Yes." And then she took it to Alaska. And the latest I heard was, that there was Aurangzeb's chappals in Alaska.
It was hilarious. I mean, even if it was true or not true, I mean, whatever, it was a lot of fun reading the story. And in fact, quoting from that chapter, that article, uh, the guy who finds this chapel, buried in the snow, says that snakes is more likely, sort of hidden. I know them snake charmers from your country. Heaven knows when they come, like he said, pointing to the coiled toes. This casual sort of racism. I mean, it's
Yes.
quite evident. How was it in those times, 60s, 70s? What was it
Yes.
like?
But it was not in any way offensive. What it was
Okay.
because of lack of ignorance. It was because they
Okay.
were the Americans were very basically insular people, particularly at that time,
Ah,
and they were sort of happy with their own world, and they didn't
yes.
really so interested in the outside world, and unfortunately they didn't know very much about the outside
I
world.
know. I
I
know.
suppose
Yeah.
they were busy getting on with their work.
Yeah.
And so I had somebody asking me how many siblings I had, and was very
Yeah.
disappointed to learn I had only one. And he said, "But India is such a heavily populated country. None of the time do you have elephants walking on your street. I mean, going down your streets." I said, "Sometimes." I said, "Then
Yeah.
where do you park them? How do you park them?"
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
had no answer to that.
Yeah. And
Do you have
I would like,
parking meters?
it's, I mean, I know. I mean, the West is kind of still, they don't have any idea what's happening here. I mean, it's a lot better now, but still it
Yes,
is
yes,
kind of, they don't know much. It's based on what they hear from, individuals,
yes.
perhaps, or YouTube for that matter. So, I mean, I really wanted to show everybody this picture, and it has
Oh,
got
that
the
sounds
entire,
funny.
it has got the entire fam there. And what was their reaction and kind of support to this book, because it has got uh, it has got so much, and that kind of it is tough to come together in one book. So what was the reaction, first of all, like you are
Oh,
bringing this
the
there?
preface is written by my nephew. In fact, the little
Okay.
preface there.
Yeah, I
So
read
I
that.
was
Yeah,
very, very, very happy. And then there's an article on my trying to, trying to give the little children in the family a bath,
yeah,
in the bathtub,
yeah,
and
yeah,
what pranks they played, and it was
yeah,
quite hilarious.
yeah. Yeah. So I want to go to Kolkata again and kind of explore that, because you have talked about uh, you have talked about Chinatown in Calcutta, and that was very intriguing for me. It has always been very intriguing for me, because this Chinese milieu in this city where they don't actually belong, yet they belong there. Um, what is the situation right now, and compared to what was happening back then? And tell us, the audience, especially because they might not be aware about this entire scenario.
You know, To tell you very frankly, I don't really know, what is happening exactly, because, we've been sort of away from Calcutta now many years.
Right.
But I think, they are sort of more or less now moving into a place called Tangra, where I think they have the
Yes.
tanneries and things like that. And I believe they run the most fabulous restaurants there. People go out
Wow.
all the way to Tangra, it's nearer the airport, and
Yes.
have their food there, Chinese food. I believe it's the most delicious over there.
Yes.
And the Chinese, in fact, not all the young people want to leave and go away. They're quite happy. They
Yes.
feel this is
Yes.
their home. So of course, it's
Yes.
dwindled a lot, but
Yes.
there are quite a few of them still around,
Yes.
and they feel this is our home. We've grown up here. They speak
Right.
Hindi and Bengali.
Right. Amazing. I think we have a question, so we'll just take it.
Yes.
Minakshi is asking, what's your inspiration? A unique style of writing. She's commenting on that.
Oh, oh, oh.
So yeah, it's praise for you, I suppose. And I on that count, I also, it's just a follow up question to this question by Minakshi, that right, you know this book which is so abstract. How do you kind of box it? It is tough to box it with because and taking this to especially publishers, they will be like, what's happening? It's they just kind of they find it difficult to market also, how to market it and kind of put it in a box, because they all publishers love to box books in genres, or perhaps in a marketing sort of tool or template. So a bit about the publishing thing all as well.
Yeah, well, I think you'll have to ask my publisher, who's very sweetly done a very good job with it,
Yeah,
and got the best printer, got Thompson's to print it.
yeah,
In fact, it's even we were, we didn't mean this to be a book to sell really. It's more, a
okay,
book to give away to your friends and family as presents.
I know. Yeah,
And, uh, but somehow, it's sort of caught seems to resonate
yes,
quite well with some of the people who have seen the book, and they
yeah,
seem to, I think it's the putting together of the articles, and the layout and the design has been very well
yeah,
done by
yeah,
this friend of mine, young friend,
yeah,
and that I suppose makes it a nice package. But it's for the readers to judge. And inspiration, as I said, was that need to display to my friends, my 11-year-old friends in Colombo, that
yes.
I could also write and write better than them.
Truly, they ought to read this one. It is quite necessary. Sticking to Kolkata, the refugee crisis, and you have written about it. So and it must have been awful. I've been reading a bit
Yes.
about the crisis and the war, and tell us about the aftermath of what was happening at that point. There's an entire chapter dedicated to this in the book, guys, and you have to read it. And there's a side read also about the war by it's a book by Manoj Ghosh, and it has got everything about the war, a journalist's kind of perspective. But this again gives us perspective about what was happening to the refugees. So tell us a
Yes,
bit.
in fact, this was Mr. Kushwant Singh, if you
Yeah,
remember, old
yeah,
timer.
yes,
He was,
yes,
he was in Calcutta, and he had come specially for meeting all these people, and finding out the situation,
yeah,
and because his son Rahul and I were together, and
yeah,
studying together for a while. So he,
yeah,
he sort of called me up and said, "Would you like to
right,
come and see the?" So I went along, and then we interviewed these refugees in Calcutta for yeah.
yeah. I
So
think the
for
Wi-Fi
several
kind of,
years,
yes. Ma'am, can you
yeah.
repeat the
Now
answer,
it's
because I
okay.
think yeah, now it's okay. Can you repeat the answer, please?
Yes. Yeah. So, Calcutta was filled with these refugees, and naturally
Yeah,
with so many people, the crowding, and of course, the first thing that came, the pestilence and the disease was this eye conjunctivitis called Joy
yeah,
Bangla. It's so quiet.
yeah,
And every second person in Calcutta was down with that
yeah,
Joy Bangla. And of course, a lot of other illnesses. But Calcutta is a city that absorbs people, It sort of, whoever it is. So they got absorbed by and by.
yeah.
And very
And
sad.
the reading those parts, I was like, okay, I have to go. Especially the chapter on Chinatown, I was like, I have to go there now because
Okay.
sadly I haven't been to Kolkata, and it is such a shame. I have to be
Oh,
there to experience it. There's this, and yes, you were saying, ma'am.
sorry.
You were saying
Sorry.
something.
Hello.
Yes.
No, no, no,
Yeah, yeah.
no, not
Okay,
really.
okay. Great,
Well,
great. So there's this part, and this is on page 113, I think. So it's called the an avant-garde evening. And
yeah.
it was very funny again. So this book is full of, it is the book is funny in parts. I mean, very funny in parts. So guys, you have to read it, and then you'll get to know. And I've been recommending it on LinkedIn also, of all places. I mean, everybody loves non-fiction there, but still I'm kind of talking about it, so they experience what's
Very sweet.
it is. This is also mostly non-fiction.
Yeah. Well, that Sudhir Dayal in
Yes,
avant-garde
yes, yes,
evening,
yes. Yeah,
when we were in college, there were a lot of these floating around the city in Bombay, and they
the
were
art
very successful.
connoisseurs, the art
Yeah,
connoisseurs.
well, they used to style themselves, but they were very successful bankers or,
Yeah.
working for multinational companies, working and cutthroat businesses.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes,
But
ma'am.
at
Yes,
the
ma'am.
same time, in the evening, they became patrons of arts and charities, and things like that. And, they were just, in the beginning, we were quite awed by them, because they lived
Yeah,
in very fancy apartments and
yeah.
they entertained and
Yeah.
they talked about these, the late the art and
Yes.
art galleries abroad and
Yeah.
books and it was seemed so very exciting. Later we
Yeah.
realized that they were culture vultures.
I
They
don't know if
came
this
to
name if is this name real. I
well,
certainly hope
almost
it is.
well, not quite, because there were so many of them there, and we
Yeah.
shouldn't
So
complain because as students we were often invited, because somebody's we happened to be somebody's nephew, somebody's cousin, uncle, or some relationship or the other, and they wanted young people, so they and we had a lot of enjoyed their hospitality, so I shouldn't complain, but
I
they
know.
were caricatures.
I know. I should quote from here because it is very fun. Uh, so would you like to read? Would you like to read this one?
Which one? Which one?
I've been the Sudhir Dayal part. Would you like to
Huh?
read from here? Perhaps this is on page 113. I think so. Yes.
113.
One. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And on the side there is also a question, kind of, it's again praise. Upasna is saying that how do you wear so many caps so successfully. There is so
Yes.
I think
So
am
many
not
caps.
aware about the caps.
Well,
I'm
what?
not aware about which caps she's talking about, but you should tell us which cap she's talking about. Perhaps it's the education industry she's talking about. What is she talking about?
That's, I mean, I don't. This is my hobby, as you might say, writing. In a way,
Yes.
my parents tried to, especially my mother tried to see that I went to painting classes, singing classes, dancing classes,
Yeah.
but nothing worked,
Yeah.
and only this writing was the only thing that I
Good.
seemed to. So it did not do well. It was just one cap.
I think
And
one
then,
cap is enough. Upasna,
yes,
one cap is enough. He's doing pretty well at that, and we know that. I mean, at least I know because I've
then
worked with.
I advise a school. I love doing that, but
Ah,
I haven't been doing it recently. But I like
yes,
enjoy doing that.
yes, yes, yes. So, ma'am, did you find it? 113.
Yes, yes. What do you want me to read?
Yeah, just I think the part where kind of Sudhir Dayal is one of the pioneers of the species, and the snob of Sudhir Dayal. That part,
Yeah,
perhaps.
he's one of the pioneers of the species. Having
Yes.
spent 2 summers plodding around art galleries in Europe, He considers himself to be a sort of cultural guru. A carefully acquired presque boheme air hangs around his person. His clothes are strictly casual. He is bearded, his glasses horn rimmed. To meet for the first time, he can be disconcerting. You must be prepared to submit to his inquisition. By day, Sudhir Dayal is a highly successful banker who goes all cultural by night. For alas, culture to sustain requires finance. It is only fair. An invitation to a Dayal party is a memorable experience. People with minor poets, painters, architects, movie makers, movie makers, newcomer treads the the lit flat is like ye old curiosity shop. The floor being disturbingly littered with wood carvings, headless bronzes, vast ceramic ashtrays, folk art cushions, and jungles of potted plant.
It is an amazing. I think Sudhir Dayal deserves his own book. It's a character which can kind of evolve into something more.
I
So
think it still exists. They say it still exists in a big way.
True, truly, truly. And since it is the Book Nerds podcast, we talk about books, different books. Obviously, the middle is there, and guys, you have to grab a copy from Amazon. And is it available in bookstores, ma'am? In Delhi or
I
somewhere?
It
Yeah,
might be, but I think Amazon certainly and Flipkart.
yeah. So you
Yes.
can pick it up from Amazon. I'll leave a link in the comments in the top comment, and you can buy a copy from there. Leave a review on Amazon, Goodreads, wherever. You can reach out. Also, share your feedback via email to us, and we'll share it with ma'am as well. And also we talk about a lot of genres, and this is I can't even call it in any genre, which is, I mean, an awesome thing. It is always good for a book. What about your reading habits now? Do you delve into which genres do you delve into? Do you get time? What's happening with the reading habit these
Well,
days?
frankly, sorry to say, but the reading has gone down, right now because one's been
Okay,
busy with all this.
I
So
know.
at the end of the day, you don't want to do very much reading.
Yeah. Any of your
So
favorites? Would you like to share any of your favorites so that people can go and kind of have a
uh,
side read, perhaps?
well, I like reading biographies,
Okay,
and which is the one um, recently I was reading this on Jinnah
yeah,
by Sheila Reddy. Very, very
right,
interesting, Jinnah and Rati, the life of the
yeah.
Stu. Very beautifully written. And I,
Mr. and
as I,
Mrs. Is it the Mr. and Mrs. Jinnah? Is
yes, yes,
that's
I
the one?
think that's, yes,
Right, right,
yes.
right. It's a huge one. It's a huge one.
Yes, it's a huge one. It's a huge one. Very well written, very well written.
Yes, yes.
And it's a very interesting story. I
Awesome.
like reading about real people and
Yeah.
as I said, biographies of special fascination.
Brilliant. Love the book. I'm not even kidding, guys. Do grab a copy. It was awesome talking to you and having you on the podcast, ma'am. It is amazing. We are just hoping that you are writing even now and kind of want to come up with more books because there are so many within this one as well. I
Uh-huh.
really think so. And waiting for those books. Thank you so much for being on the Book Nerds
Thank you.
podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so
So
much.
nice. Thank you. Um, bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.